first drone? How did you get started? What got you a bug to get started in this space? How did you get started?
I mean, if you want to go way back, Andy, it's as simple as flying singles, RC helicopters going back, I don't know, 10, 15 years. In terms of quads, going back 2015-ish. In terms of being 107 licensed, all that, 2018.
What was your first quad? What was the first drone?
First quad would have been a Phantom 2 something.
And so that was our first drone as well. So back then we had to stick a GoPro on there, and we had no idea what we were actually shooting. So you had to not only know how to fly, but you had to guess where you're putting the camera to get the picture of the house or the property or what have you.
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, you didn't have all the telemetry. So I remember having the little RC, the rocket, the little barometers that you would rubber band to one of the legs so you could figure out, okay, that was 400 feet or whatever. But what it really taught, at least me, and talking with others that went that similar approach, Andy, is how to fly without being heads down, relying on your instruments. You had to learn line of sight. You had to learn, am I going to clear these trees as I climb out or not? And a lot of that then helps where now you're able to glance down, look around, versus watching the screen all the time.
So tell me, start off with the Phantom 2 Pro. What's today? So fast forward 5 or 6 years later, what's the lineup of drones that you use today, and what are you using most often?
The one, my go-to, it's kind of split. For things that I've got to run drone deploy, Litchi, things like that, that's where I use the Mavic 2 Pro. For everything else, my go-tos are Autel Evo 2s, either the Pro 6K or the 8Ks. They're my go-to. They're my workhorses. Why don't I have a Mavic 3? It's simple. The compatibility, the SDK, some of those lag a little bit. I don't worry about having to have the newest, latest, greatest on the block. Plus, I can pick those up cheap after the people who want the latest, greatest, newest toys. After they figure out they're not flying them, they need to offload it so they can get the new one. I pick them up on a bargain. Plus, then all the bugs are worked out.
So talk about, so you're a little different than most of our pilots. So if you go across the country, not just our pilots, but most pilots are flying a DJI. What's the other advantage of the Autel lineup? What do you love about them?
A couple of things is, on a lot of the Drone Brother missions, the bulk of that work I'm running with the Mavic 2 Pro, okay, which replaced my Phantom 4P Obsidian, which was the workhorse. Okay. So where I need to run like a drone deploy, or I need to run Litchi, something like that, I'm using the Mavic 2 Pro because that's its compatibility. If I'm just doing hand flying, if I need to do just some basic set up the mission with the Autel, I'm using the Autel because of its performance, its endurance, its size is a little bigger than a Mavic. It's ease of use. I don't have to worry about having all my DJ unlocking codes handy. It's just that flexibility. But it's one of those where, you know what, Andy, I got multiple tools in the toolbox. I've got the different Autels. I've got the Mavic 2s. I've got the DJI Avata for when I got to do FPV stuff. It's just having the different tools in the toolbox and knowing what tool to use when and where for different things.
Nice. So what was, how did you get started with the quadcopters? Was it residential? Most people get started in the residential space. How did you get started? What was your first few missions that you got started doing years ago?
Event coverage, doing events. The residential thing, that's the ultimate race to the bottom. Unless you can get way up at the really, really high end, everybody, their brothers, cousins, nephews, nieces, future born kids, it's the race to the bottom. So everybody's there. So, but you got to do it, have them in there. I do a couple a year, for those that do it, but it's, doing events and then evolving into other things, and just increasing that depth and scope of focus and experience, Andy.
Nice. So what's your go-to work today? What does Pictures Over Stillwater do mostly? Is events, commercial real estate, construction? What's your
all the above? All the above. I mean, it's a nice mix. I mean, there's the usual, orbit around a property, capture the long-term projects, or even short-term, the one-offs, doing the panoramas, all those stuff. There's running the maps, the photogrammetry, imaging, stuff like that. But then there's also just the hand fly ad hoc. Get that image, capture what's going on. There's the basic script, follow the script, get the things, but it's also being aware, cognizant, what seems to be the focus, or what did you hear from that last time, or what was the feedback, or like you notice things that are going on. It's like, you know what? It's kind of like shiny new toy. Where? Okay. And it's just having that focus, seeing things and then getting that, and then that may lead to something else.
Nice. And this is I've known you for a while. This is a full-time gig. How long into starting the company, was it always a full-time gig for you, or is this early on a side hustle that developed into a full-time gig for you?
Yeah. I mean, it started out as a side distraction. Candidly, I was in the middle of working on a book project, and it wasn't a writer's block. I needed something to, just help me through some things. And all of a sudden it's like, this is interesting, and it ties in with what I was doing. So it evolved from a side hustle into the business, and now it's tough to tell sometimes is the regular business the side hustle, because they go hand in hand. The one is about information technology, the cloud, where you're storing your data, how you're protecting it, things like that. The other is about the generating it, and how are you processing, and where is it going, and all those great things. So they go hand to hand.
Got it. And what kind of work do you like? What kind of work do you like doing the most? Is the event stuff? What do you like doing the most? Construction, event work? Is there any one thing you like doing that's the most fun for you?
Again, it's one of those that depends. I tell you, when it's cold out, when it's 5-10 below zero, and you got to be out there, you know what? I want the programmatic, autonomous, fly the routine here, because then my hands get to stay in my pockets or hand warmer longer, Andy.
Yes.
On the other hand, I love doing the just capture, where it's more hand flying. But I tell you, when it's cold, that is not fun. So it varies a bit. But it's I like being able to, okay, let's capture something new. Let's try something in a different way. And, it's like, yeah, you got to remember, we're drone pilots first and foremost, but we also have to keep in mind, we're not just drone pilots. We're there to capture and help tell the story.
And can you think back of any stories over the last 5 years? What's been your favorite? Is there anything that stands out that's like, wow, that was just a spectacular flying because of scenic beauty, or because what was a standout?
I mean, I love night flying. Absolutely love night flying. Back when I used to do a lot of scuba diving, I love night diving. So they kind of go hand in hand. You don't have as many people out, the air can sometimes be better. You get some good scenery shots, stuff like that. That's always fun. That's always interesting. But flying in situations that are complex, maybe it's atop of a 42-story building, that has different constraints. When you're right next to the Bravo airspace, that can be interesting. Or working through get the clearance to fly above published altitudes in a Bravo airspace or something like that. Something that's a little trickier, something that's different. Working through approvals to be able to fly in no-fly zones and be able to do it. And then somebody says, how did you do that? I work the process,
Yeah.
Things that I've seen. Yeah, there's one I'd love to tell you, but I think we'd have to cut it out because OSHA would not want to hear about it. Run into that quite a bit, Andy, where, there's stuff you see and it's kind of like, I think I may have to want to turn the camera off for this or look the other way. You see that, but just watching how things progress, how things evolve.
Nice.
A lot of different things.
And how about something you did you don't ever want to remember? Any close calls or any things that were any crazy Crazy stories
Yeah.
that stick in your mind.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you get the ones where, the people are coming in your face. I mean, there's a funny one I'll tell you, which is I was flying somewhere, I was capturing something, and a security guard comes up and, you can't be here. You're, dot 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 dot. And I said, excuse me, right now, you're interfering with a flight, but if you stand right back there, I'll land and we can talk. No, you gotta get. I said, I'll tell you what, you establish a perimeter, you secure the perimeter, you keep me safe so that I can land this. And while you're securing the perimeter, I'll get down, I'll show you all my credentials, all my paperwork. Meanwhile, you secure the perimeter. Thank you very much. And the guy was speechless. And I showed him all my credentials, all my information. He goes, by the way, where can I learn about this? And being on the, the FAA fast safety team, Drone Pro, I carry cards, I carry stickers, Andy. I carry handouts with me that I say, here, and at construction sites, the workers love stickers. So I got job sites that I'm too. They're all wearing "I love drone safety" stickers on their hard hats.
That's great. That's awesome. What speaking of night flying, so things have changed over the years. So you stay up on all you're kind of an expert on all the legal stuff. So what's the current status of being able to fly? Do you still need a separate exemption for that, or is it now open to everyone that you can fly at night? What's the update on that?
Yeah, it used to be, we had to have the 107-29, the daylight waiver, and those sunsetted about a year and a half ago. They were still kind of languishing out there, so we used to have those to fly at night. As of a year and a half ago, April 2021, is once you took the renewal test or for the first time test, once you took that, then you were good to go for night flying. You just had to have your lights and attend the training and stuff like that. You were good to go. So there was no such thing as the classic daylight waiver anymore. The same thing with operating over people, operating over moving vehicles, all of that. Some of those things updated, some of those things changed, but a lot of the effective pieces are still there, constraining when and where you can fly over people or over moving vehicles.
Got it. So what do you outside of work, do you use the drone for anything fun? Do you like doing stuff outside of work, or is that work enough for you to keep your drone fixed?
It's one of those things. It's hard sometimes, Andy. Where does work begin and play? They blur at times. And part of it is, okay, here, I'm learning something new that's going to become part of the repertoire, or vice versa. But yeah, to get to your question, yeah, I just landed, I don't know, I think you texted me about 45 minutes ago, and I said, yeah, sure, no worries, because I went up and did a quick shot of my roof where I've got guys up there shoveling 15 feet of snow off the roof. So I took the shot yesterday. I wanted to send it today to my contractor so that they can see what that progress is. Now, is that work? Is that play? The lines blur, Andy.
Yeah. So you and us as well. We've been at this for quite some time now. So things have changed quite a bit in the last 5 or 6 years. We're kind of the old timers in this business now. I can't believe we've been doing this for 9 years now, but what advice would you give to someone that's just starting off in this space today, that's said, hey, I think these drones are something that are really cool, and I think I can make a business out of this? What advice would you give someone today that was just starting off in the business?
Yeah, Andy, I mean, spot on. We got one project that we're working on together that will be 3 years here, I think, in another month, which you're like, 3 years on one project? Yeah, some of these go that long. They're long duration type projects, which are fun. I would say learn. Okay, it's easy to go to a forum and say, hey, I'm new, tell me what I got to do. Well, guess what? You might get the, hey, you're new, type Google, what do I do? Okay, so yeah, get involved in forums, ask questions, but also show some initiative. Go out there and learn, read. And it's not just about flying the drone. What about the airspace? Where are you going to have that drone up in the air? Where are your feet going to be on the ground? But then also learning about the construction, especially if that's the focus area. Learn about what it is that you're working with and around, whether it's construction, real estate, event coverage, with producers. Learn that shots. everybody wants to fly the drone, zip, 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 FPVs, all over the place. And for some things, that's cool. That's the great. But one of the quick lessons is slow down, capture it nice and smooth, push in, pull back, which is learning the language of the producers. I got producers that say, you want me to gimbal up or gimbal down? They're like, huh? No, just push in, pull back, or, pan or slide, whatever. So it's learning the drone, learning the airspace, your ground, the equipment, Andy, but also the other aspects to it, especially at the construction sites. And also that whole thing about safety, we talk about safety, look up. There have been so many times where it's like, okay, I'm good. All of a sudden it's like, whoop, there's a power line there. Oh, there's a crane swinging over my head. You know what? Have your head on a swivel, not planted down in a screen.
Yeah. So do you think if you had to start all over again today in 2023, do you think it'd be easier today getting started or harder today? Because where do you see, if someone wanted to get into this space today, you think it's more difficult today to get started? Or you think 5, 6, 7 years ago when we started this thing, that was like the most difficult thing? You had to learn the basics back then. Is it too easy today?
I think in some ways it's relatively easy. Here's the thing with a lot of things, Andy, today, they're easy. You got that big red button, push the easy button. Okay, that's fine. Push the button, take off, push the button, land, push the button, come home. But then there's that other aspect is what happens when what happens when the aircraft, the drone doesn't respond? What happens when all of a sudden you are flying on a 30+ mile an hour day and that's not gust and you've got to land? How are you going to do that? And you're in automated mode and that aircraft is going all over the place. Okay. When you've got to fly the sticks, when you flip the switch and you're flying manual, that's the part that takes that time, that takes that experience. You can get some of that on the simulators, which are great. But Andy, it's also really learning about when you're in those abnormal situations, when you've got to actually fly, or when you've actually got to capture, or when you've got to put a control input on that gimbal as you're orbiting around something and you don't want that real jerky move. You want to do that nice and smooth. That just comes with practice, 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 practice.
Yeah, and a lot of people, things are being automated these days, and these kids don't get a chance to practice. All it is push a button; it's all automated.
It's like when I work with them, whether I'm doing community ed classes or working with interns, or people that I get people, they say, "Hey, Greg, can we come and just help you out? We'll crew for you, but teach us what we're not learning." I'm like, "Yeah, no worries if you're not a knucklehead." And I'll have them do stuff like, okay, you're going to do 5 takeoffs and landings. Why? Trust me, we're going to get to that. Okay, now turn your screen off. Why? Because we'll get to that. And then we'll be out and, we'll go to a training area. And that's part of it, is practicing and running missions in a training area just to practice, try things out, Andy. Then we're out somewhere in the real world and all of a sudden something will happen. The screen will fail, a cable will come loose. And they'll do it instinctively. They're like, oh yeah, just what do I do? I said, just keep flying. You're doing good. I've got the aircraft. I'm monitoring it. You bring it back in, etc. And they're kind of like, that was different. Oh, it's called basic 101 type things.
Yeah. So speaking of automation, so I'm reading things as you are as well, these drones in a box and all these automated things that are happening. Do you see how far away are we from you and I having to go into forced retirement and being out of jobs? Will these drones truly fly by themselves and not need a live pilot? Or are we still a few years away from that happening?
Andy, on Someday Isle, they're doing it right now this afternoon. And you know about Someday Isle. You've been around.
Yeah.
Someday Isle is that mythical island that someday I'll move there. Someday I'll get that there, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, the prototypes, the proof of concepts are working through, but there's so many different things. They're working on the airspace. They're working on the actual aircraft, all those pieces. Yeah, we're going to see it. Here's the thing. If all you are is, I've got a drone, I'm going to go out and just make a couple of quick box flying drones, you're in a race to the bottom scenario. you've got to expand your horizons, whether it's with the drones, with different sensors, different types of drones. If all you're doing is FPV, the world's passing you by. If all you're doing are drones, the world is passing you by. You've got to be able to do other things. There is the flying the drones, the figuring out the airspaces, permissions, especially to be able to do things in more complicated areas, get that night experience, working in tight quarters, being able to figure out how to do a shot where it looks like you're flying right over people, you're nowhere near them, but yet it looks that way. Getting that creative, working with producers, working with others, and doing some things where they push you, but you're also learning and just working into a lot of different adjacencies, learning the tools, whether it's drone deploy, Litchi, the reality captures, as well as some of
The post-production tools, learning how to use Adobe,
absolutely.
learning how to edit videos. I mean, there's so much more to this than just flying a drone to make yourself a well-rounded
Yeah. And
company.
whether you're using Adobe or move into like DaVinci Resolve, and then getting into different plugins, using things like some of the downstream stuff that we're doing where we're collecting that view of what would be out the window, that then the client is pulling those into their BIM tools, whether it's SketchUp or whether it's Blender, whatever it happens to be, where you don't necessarily have to know them, but be aware of them, because then as you figure out what is it that they're looking to have captured, then all of a sudden you can start to get those better shots.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump to, since our main focus has been for the last few years is construction. We do a little bit in these other areas, but we're trying to really hone down on the construction space. So talk to me about where drones are headed in the construction space. Where do you see drones having a real impact on the construction site? How are they helping these construction, the PMs and the superintendents save time, save money? Where do you see things? Where are they at today? And where do you see the drones going in the next year or two in the construction space, where this is really going to make a difference on these job sites?
Yeah, Andy, I mean, there's the basic bread and butter, the basic meat potatoes, so to speak, of, the orbits, the recurring shots, the video, the photo, the video, the 360, stuff like that, where then they can look at the progress. They can go back and compare things, but they can also go in and start counting. We had that one site where they needed to count all the trees on the property, using the tools where you can go in there with a map and say, have the map tool capture it. But some things like that. But then you start to move into some of the next phase, like using software or collecting for BIM, like for Cupic, or some of these different tools where you're collecting the data, they ingest it, they're creating their point clouds, where then they can do the virtual, the monitoring, what's the progress,
360 walkthroughs. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, doing some more things like that, and then also capturing that view. It's one thing to be able to see the building and say, okay, here, I know where to fly. It's another to have, okay, here's the drawings of where the building is going to be, and here are your coordinates. Okay, we can get that figured out. It's another to say, here, go to this corner, go up 40 feet, look out at this angle and capture a 180, then go up another 40 feet and capture that again. You're like, why? And then all of a sudden you see when they're CG, their animations, it's like, that's a real background you're looking out at that then they're pulling in. So there's more things like that are as well. So we're seeing, again, this goes back to those adjacencies moving up, down into different areas, but certainly that tracking, being able to get in there really quick and really close and get that view.
Got it. Yeah, there's you kind of hit the nail on the head. And most of if you pull aside 100 superintendents and put them in a room and ask them what are drones good for, 99 out of 100 can say, oh, they're great for taking progress shots or drone shots from four corners of the site, and they miss out on all of their tools and all the other benefits. And I find that once you educate these guys on what the drones can do, from stockpile volumetrics to
absolutely
things like that, they all, wow, I never knew that. And that becomes the go-to on every job site going forward.
Yep. I mean, it's like the hero shots. Yeah, hero shots are great, but you got to be able to do more than a hero shot. It's how they all come together. And that hero shot could also be an event. We've done that where like the helicopters lifting the RTUs onto a rooftop. That, that was fun, coordinating with the helicopter pilot and all those sorts of things. But, it's kind of like a different variation of a progress. It's somewhere between a progress and a hero shot.
We call those the milestones. So the wall tilt, the HVAC being put on the roof, the cement pours, those are all we call the milestone shots, which are yeah, it's great. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What's been you've been working with us for years now, Drone Brothers. What are some of the things that you enjoy working with Drone Brothers for, and what are some things we can maybe be doing better at Drone Brothers?
Yeah, I mean, I've loved the diversity. I mean, we got projects that are just flat, horizontal, below ground for a long period of time. Those are interesting because if you're seeing them frequently, you can see where they're going. You can see that progress. And then we got the other ones that go 42, 45 stories up in the air, all those different variations, all those different progress. So just seeing things from that start from a cornfield to a 750,000 square foot, one floor building, things like that have been interesting. There's the learning the routes,
Hold on, Greg, hold on. You've gone, the screen's frozen. Hold on a second. The screen's frozen.
Done annual adapting, being able to do more and more of the custom work plus the basics.
Got it. Okay, yeah, the screen froze there. Your internet connection is unstable right now. I don't know why Comcast can't seem to make their internet work properly here.
No worries. No worries.
Let me see if there's anything else here that I had some questions on. Did it work? I think that's anything else you want to add or things I didn't cover?
Yeah, I mean, just to build on some of those experiences, there's the flying outdoors. There's a flying low, the flying high, moving from the bombing run shots where you're up 400 feet, down to where you're on the deck, but also flying inside. Been doing flying inside now for a couple of years, and not inside. Not everything needs FPV, but on the other side to it, there are so many uses for FPV besides doing flips, turns, tumbles, and all those other things. Being able to get into tight quarters, being able to do some different views. Again, that gets back to having those different tools, the different technology in the toolbox. To be able to capture those views where somebody says, wow, I didn't realize you could do that. Wow, I didn't realize it looked like that from over there.
Yeah, and the technology, these cameras are getting so much better that you can get into low light situations.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So speaking of the technology, where do you hope, or where do you see things going? And gosh, it's moving so fast. I mean, it changes like every 6 months. Where do you see things a year, 2 years, 3 years from now? Where do you see things besides this automation and autonomy stuff? Where do you hope things go, or where do you see drones getting in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think they're going to become more we're just going to see more of them. So the skies are going to become much more crowded. We've got RID, remote identification, coming in later this year. A lot of people are worried about it. There are concerns. It's going to change some things. So we certainly got that. One of the things that's happening, Andy, is that, we're seeing the new drones coming out so fast, prices coming down, but on the other side to it, the software is lagging. The bugs might show up, but you're waiting. You look at like a DJI, how long it takes them to get their STK, their system developer kits, their APIs published. So Drone Deploy, Litchi, Pix4D, you go right on down that list, have added all that support. So you might have the newest, coolest drone on the block, but what about the software compatibility? Is it there yet? And that ties back to is, okay, if you're setting that up, okay, so you hand me a mission, I'm going to double check it. I'm going to not only double check it, I might triple check it to make sure that if I go out and launch it, I'm not going to fly right into the side of a crane or a building or something. So as the pilot, you need to be able to do that, and checks and balances is, you know, hey, this doesn't look right, versus like, okay, somebody set it up, I'm just going to fly it. No, you gotta be that multi-dimensional, those different skill sets. So I think, Andy, that's a lot of it, is that evolving aspect, that you're not just a photographer, you're not just a drone operator, but you've also got to become aware of that construction site, what they're doing, how to blend into that environment, how to let them know what you're doing so that you're helping them, that you're staying out of the way, but that you're getting what they can do and learning about it.
Yeah. So you mentioned there's gonna be a lot of drones in the sky. So I get asked all the time by friends and relatives, are we going to have every day hundreds of drones buzzing over our house, dropping off toothpaste and mouthwash and Amazon packages? Is that going to be, are we going to like go outside every day and just see buzzing happening? Is that, are we 6 months away from that? Are we a year away from that? How?
Andy, that's going to depend on where you live. If you're in an area with a lot of trees, I don't think you're going to see that very quickly. If you're in a more open neighborhood that is maybe a little bit more distant, where they're going to be able to pull that off, sure. I got more activity because I live underneath a Victor airway. So I've got jets and planes going back and forth all time. I've got a corridor where we've got the air ambulance helicopters going back and forth. They're more of a risk than the drones that are half mile around, where people are flying where they're not supposed to be.
Yeah, but are we getting our Slurpees? Are we getting our Slurpees delivered to us anytime? Is Domino's gonna be delivering a pizza anytime soon to your house on a drone?
Nope. Nope, not where I live.
Well, thank you again.
No worries.
And I will we'll talk to you soon.